Hello and welcome to Recruiting and Hospitality from caterer.com. I'm Lancelot Narayan, and in each programme, as you know, we discuss matters that affect you, employers, hospitality employees to be precise, recruitment, development, retention, and other matters that crop up and affect you and your teams. So we like to cover all bases, and that's what we're going to be doing. Not covering all bases today, but we're going to be talking about well-being, which is such an important subject, particularly in the aftermath of the pandemic. As you may know, we had our caterer.com People Awards did take place last year, but in a very different form. We had 3 categories, and in each category, we had 15 winners. I know, it's crazy. But one of those winners, with a very interesting story, and we're going to be delving into it today, was Compass Group, and I'm delighted to say I had the head of talent with me today, Amanda Scott from Compass Group. Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Lance.
Lovely to you to be here. I'm glad you could make it, and we can spend this time. That's brilliant. Well, I mean, it was a fantastic and well-deserved win. I was recently reading through your entry, and it was just each one of these stories from all the companies that won, all the employees that won, are fascinating stories, and they all deserve their time in the spotlight, because they're all different. But let's go back to the sort of before the beginning, if you like. During the onset of the pandemic, or before that, what were the biggest challenges you were facing as a company?
Before the pandemic?
Yeah, just before it started.
Yeah, I think like any organization in hospitality, we're continually evolving. We are about growth. We're about serving our customers. We're about retaining our people, developing our people, just creating value for our clients, value for our shareholders, and creating a great place to work, like I guess most organizations were. So that all
Yeah.
felt quite doable.
Yeah, because you knew where you were.
That's right, yeah.
That's right. So when things first started happening, and it sort of crept up on everybody and then pounced,
Yeah.
what were your first concerns then?
I think like everyone, the uncertainty was just the biggest thing to deal with. It was completely unprecedented. It's a bit of an overused word, but it was completely unprecedented. We didn't know if it was going to be days, weeks. I think did anyone think it would be months? I'm not sure we did, and certainly not years. So I think the uncertainty was really the biggest thing that we were dealing with. And it was just the situation evolved daily. So stuff seemed to change day in from one day to the next. Whether it was, the length of time we were going to be locked down, the extent of the lockdown, and then we were getting into, furlough, which no one had ever really properly heard of. So I think that kind of the pace of the situation moving and the uncertainty were really the biggest things for us.
It was stress upon stress, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so Compass Group, like other organisations did do, even if you were really small, if you were a corner sandwich
Yeah.
shop or something, or there were, companies were supporting key workers,
Yeah.
and you were doing that too. How much additional pressure did that put on your people?
So, I mean, I think it's worth saying that a lot of our employees were key workers because we were working in particularly in hospitals, and certainly initially schools. We were also doing staff feeding for, a lot of industry. So a lot of our people were key workers, and that was one of the other challenges. Was in some parts of the business there was complete uncertainty and closed down, so the event side. And then in the other part of the business, it was absolutely full on, and quite a daunting task. So I think the pressure in the key worker sector was for the individuals on the ground, and we did what we could to redeploy staff to support those areas, and did that pretty quickly actually. And people who would normally work in events went and worked in hospitals, and we set up, the big hospital at the Excel. So there was no shortage of stuff to do. But we also did other stuff for key workers around food parcels for the NHS. We used our supply chain to provide food to different communities. So I think everyone kind of pulled together, which was great actually.
Yeah, terrific. In terms of well-being of your teams, I mean, these circumstances were pretty overwhelming. Even though you sound like it sounds like you had the mission in place. It sounded like
It
the
sounds like that.
it does sound like that. You made it
No.
sound like that. But how difficult was it for you to decide what action to take? Were people coming to you at that time and saying we're not felt stressed like this, or what was happening at the time?
Yeah, I think firstly, whatever we did, we worked as a team. And that was, I think, when I look back at the decisions we made, the speed that we made them, the ability to communicate, which isn't always our strong point with 40,000 plus employees, I'm still amazed. So firstly, I think working as a team, and secondly, I think a lot of the decisions were based on kind of what feels like the right thing to do for our people and for the communities that we work in. So in the absence of guidelines or a playbook or a manual to know what to do and what's coming next, that was a real kind of guiding tenet of the decisions that we made.
What sort of initiatives did you take? And
Yeah.
how did you uh how did you come to those decisions as well when you chose what to do?
Yeah, I mean, it did feel a bit like drinking from a fire hose because there was just so much to take on board.
Mm.
But as I say, working as a team and making decisions that felt right was really important. So we did stuff from a very practical point of view to a kind of more emotional point of view. And so communication was important. So we had to send communications directly to people's home address around what is furlough. What does that mean? What does it mean for your pay? What are some of the questions that you might have? And here are some of the answers. Here's the support that's available to you from an employee assistance program, from your line manager support, all of that kind of very practical stuff. We set up an online hub for kind of mental health tips. We ran webinars for managers. We made sure our leaders were visible on those. So our most senior leadership were visible.
Can you talk me, because you did some didn't you do some there was a certain programs you did in the middle of this where the leaders were very much involved and
Yeah, so we ran some programs called Looking After the Line. So in an organization of 40,000 people, we recognize that our line managers are absolutely critical to how our employees feel and the support that they get. But we recognize that managers are just, they're in such a difficult position because they have so much stuff to do. So we really did want to acknowledge that, and we set up webinars, and I think about 5 members of our exec over 5 weeks or 10 weeks, I think it was every other week, came on the webinars and talked about their experience and said, here's what's helping me to get through, here's some hints and tips, just acknowledging that people were stressed and it was difficult and that no one had the answers. So they were really, really well received, those webinars. And I think just was a sign to the frontline organisation that, we are all struggling through this and we are doing absolutely everything we can to support.
you say they were well received. What kind of response did you get from team members in what you were doing?
So those particular webinars were we just got lots of notes. We got notes direct to the exec saying from employees saying thanks for sharing your experience. It makes me feel so much better. They took away some very practical tips around I've tried that with my team and it's really helped. So we got lots of feedback on those, but there was a whole range of other options or other support that we provided. And one of them which really sticks in my mind is we did welfare calls. We did thousands of welfare calls to people.
How did
Um,
talk me through that? How did that work?
so we had, I mean, again, the numbers all blur into one, but we had thousands of people who were either self-isolating due to COVID or had COVID. And we recognised that these people were kind of disconnected from the organisation. We didn't know their circumstances. So we set up a team to do welfare calls where we literally just called them up and said, you know, you've been off for, you know, a week or two. How are things going? How are you doing? And that was really the extent of the call. And also here's the support. We've got an employee assistance program, we've got a nurse helpline, we've got a helping hands emergency fund. Here's all the support that's available to you. And we did thousands of those calls, and they were absolutely critical. And it just, some of the stories that we heard and the difference that the team made by just calling to check in on someone was, it was amazing.
It really does make a difference, doesn't it?
Hugely, particularly
Something as
when people
simple
were
as a phone call.
isolated. Yeah. And people were saying to us, I can't believe you're calling me. Is there another reason that you're calling me? And we're like, no, no, we really are just seeing how you're doing.
Yeah. I
So
didn't do it.
yeah. No one wants that call from HR, but in this case,
Yeah.
they like that call from HR.
Yeah, lovely, fantastic. It's again something so simple that can really make all the difference. And considering there's so many employees as well at
Yeah.
Compass Group, it's that's quite a task.
Yeah.
How is your wellbeing program growing and developing today? Have you built on things that you've um probably initiated during
Yeah.
lockdown and built on them?
Yeah. Yeah. So we really ramped up our employee network, which is called You Matter, during lockdown, and that is basically an employee-led network that is the voice of our colleagues to say, here's what's happening in the business, here's kind of what we need. So we've got a whole load of ambassadors, mental health You Matter ambassadors across the business who help signpost people to get support, who promote initiatives around mental health, mental well-being. So that's something that really took off. And we worked together to produce, we would do hints and tips, put them on the website. We would do communications, we would do webinars. We would People would kind of talk to people in their units and say kind of what's happening, what do you need? So that was a real kind of, that was the real starting point for that, and that's something that we really are building on. And we do have you know, over 100 ambassadors across the business, and we'd really like to grow that, so that we just keep the network growing and building. We've continued with our mental health webinars, so we don't do them as frequently as we did, but they are always very well received. We have run, we developed and rolled out line manager training for mental health awareness so that they can spot the signs, they know what to look for, they know how to make an intervention to guide someone to get the appropriate help rather than fix it themselves. Um, so that's been a real focus area. We also, during the pandemic, expanded our employee assistance program offering so that anyone in Compass can call up, and depending on what the nature of their concern is, whether that's emotional well-being, whether it's financial well-being, they're assigned a case officer who will point them in the direction of the help that they need, and will be that consistent point of contact throughout in managing that case. So it's a great resource for people that we've continued.
Fabulous. That's fabulous. So moving forward, we talked about what you're doing now, what you've done, and what you're doing now. What plans have you got, if you can talk about them, moving forward to grow your wellbeing program for Compass? Because I can imagine that, I mean, like everywhere else, you know, sort of staff shortages and what have you. The industry is going through all of that.
Yeah,
I mean, there's all sorts of different things to consider.
yeah.
What plans have you got moving forward?
So I think a lot of it is continuing to do what we do and provide support for employees, but also to hear the voices of our employees, because we know it's really tough out there. We know that when you're working short-staffed in the front line, it's a really challenging place to be.
Mm.
So by having ambassadors across the group, we have monthly meetings where we say what's happening in the business, what do people need. So really being led by the employees is the focus. We've got a couple of initiatives in place, particularly for people who have kind of extended periods of absence. So there's a patient advocate service which helps them to get them the help that they need. That's just going to be rolled out. And we'll continue with our mental health awareness training, which has had a really good take up and really helps to support the managers in spotting the signs before a problem, escalates.
Oh, that's great, and that's going to be rolled out as we go, maybe into the next year and
Yeah,
in the 2 years.
yeah, we'll
It's
continue the rollout. Yeah.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. I mean, like I said, I was reading through the your entry, and it really was impressive. It's been great talking to you about it, Amanda. It
Thank
really
you.
has.
Thanks for
Um,
the
yeah,
opportunity.
it's brilliant, and I'd love to invite you back onto the podcast and to talk about other subjects as well, because I think we could have conversations about many subjects.
We definitely could, Lance, and I'd be
Yeah.
delighted to. Thank you.
Brilliant. That's great. That's great. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Recruiting in Hospitality. Um, if you haven't subscribed yet, what's the matter with you? Get on it. Subscribe. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can follow us on Twitter as well. We're at caterer.com. That's caterer, DOTCOM. Likewise on Instagram. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on Facebook now. Um, what else? That's it. Just come and follow us next time and get with the get where everyone's talking about it. We've been listed actually very recently as one of the best UK hospitality podcasts, which we're all very proud of, and that's thanks to our guests and thanks to you all listening to us. So thank you very much for that. I've been Lance Dr. Ryan. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.